When an atheist talk show host mocks Clint Eastwood's faith, something unexpected happens. But what if it's his silence that speaks louder than anything else? Watch till the end to see how this moment changes everything. And don't forget to comment below. Do you believe in the power of silence? The audience roars with excitement as the lights dim. The atmosphere in the studio is electric, crackling with anticipation. It's just another night on The Unfiltered Hour, a talk show known for pushing boundaries, mocking celebrities, and fueling controversy. The host, known for her biting sarcasm and sharp tongue, enters the stage with a smirk. Tonight the studio is packed, and she's ready to shake things up once again. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announces with a flourish, "get ready for a living legend. He's an actor, director, producer, and apparently a bit of a philosopher too. Please welcome Clint Eastwood." The crowd erupts into deafening applause, but it's clear the host has something else on her mind tonight. The camera pans to Clint as he walks in, stoic, composed as always. He's wearing his signature black jacket and jeans, a man who doesn't need to say much to command attention. A silver cross hangs from his neck, a simple yet powerful symbol that stands in stark contrast to his tough guy image. Clint sits down, nodding in greeting to the host. The audience quiets, anticipating the usual banter. The host's grin widens. "Clint, you're known for being a man of action, but let's get to something a little more personal. You wear that cross around your neck. I've got to ask, do you really believe in all that? In miracles, in faith, in God?" The question hangs in the air, heavy with sarcasm, as the audience shifts in their seats, sensing the tension. Clint doesn't flinch. He simply meets her gaze, his eyes calm and unyielding. A slight smile tugs at the corner of his lips, but his silence speaks volumes. The host presses on, sensing a chance to provoke him. "I mean, after everything you've been through, Clint, do you still think someone's out there looking out for you?" The audience laughs, anticipating a quick-witted retort or a moment of discomfort. But Clint remains still, the laughter in the room growing fainter as the tension mounts. The room is thick with the sound of the host's voice as she presses on, sensing an opportunity to push Clint further. "I mean, look at you," she says, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "You've been through more than most of us will ever experience. Loss, grief, the brutality of life. And yet here you are, holding on to some divine hope? I just don't get it." The audience chuckles, agreeing with her jab, enjoying the spectacle. The cameras zoom in on Clint's face, capturing his stillness, his calm presence that feels almost out of place in a world so eager for conflict. Clint's fingers lightly touch the cross around his neck, an almost imperceptible movement, but it doesn't go unnoticed by the viewers. The camera focuses on this small gesture, almost as if the cross has a story to tell of its own. The host, not one to let go of a moment, leans in, her voice turning more mocking. "I mean, Clint, faith, it's like a crutch for the weak, isn't it? You've spent years in this industry, you've seen it all. Hollywood, fame, betrayal. Doesn't it make you question everything, especially this idea that someone up there is looking out for you?" The laughter in the studio grows louder now, but Clint's expression remains unchanged. He doesn't react with anger or defensiveness. Instead, he simply listens. There's something in his demeanor that catches the host off guard. He isn't fighting back. He isn't giving her the reaction she expects. The silence that follows feels heavy. She looks to the audience, trying to stir them up, but even they seem to sense that something is different tonight. The usual rhythm of jokes and sarcasm is missing, replaced by an almost uncomfortable stillness. The host's confidence starts to waver. She shifts in her seat, forcing a laugh, but it's clear something has shifted. Clint's quiet presence is starting to disrupt the usual cadence of the show, and the audience, instead of laughing along, begins to feel the weight of the moment. The host tries to regain control of the conversation, but there's a subtle shift in the air. The audience, once buzzing with laughter, has fallen into a curious, almost reverent silence. The host clears her throat, pushing her sarcasm aside, unsure of how to proceed. "So, Clint," she says, leaning forward with a slightly softer tone, "are you really telling me that after everything, you still believe in miracles? That there's some higher power guiding your path?" Her voice is tinged with disbelief, as if testing the limits of what Clint will say next. Clint doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he leans back in his chair, his eyes focused on something far beyond the studio set. For a moment, the world seems to pause. The audience is waiting, holding their breath, unsure of how the actor, the legend, will respond to this challenge. Clint's fingers again brush against the cross, and the camera lingers on the motion. He speaks quietly, his voice steady but carrying a weight that fills the room. "If I'm still here, if I'm still standing, after everything that's happened, it wasn't just luck." The words hang in the air like a stone thrown into still water, creating a ripple of silence across the room. The host, momentarily caught off guard, stares at him. The laughter from the audience has completely stopped. The usual cynicism that drives the show's energy is gone, replaced by something else, something deeper. The host opens her mouth to speak again, but pauses, as if she's not sure what more there is to say. Clint's eyes meet hers, and for the first time, his calm gaze seems to pierce through her carefully constructed facade. "I'm still standing because I have faith, not in luck, not in coincidences," he says, his words cutting through the noise of the studio. It's a simple statement, but it carries a profound weight. The camera cuts to the audience, many of whom are now looking at Clint with something akin to awe. The host, visibly uncomfortable with the shift, tries to mask her surprise with a forced smile, but the mood has irrevocably changed. The studio is quiet, the tension in the air palpable. The host, sensing the shift, attempts to regain her footing. She laughs, but it's forced, hollow, no longer having the usual power to fill the space. "Well, that's one way to look at it," she says, trying to shift back to her usual tone. But the words feel empty, like they can't quite reach the depth of what Clint just said. The audience seems to feel it too. Their claps and laughs have died down to a murmur, and the atmosphere is charged with something that wasn't there before. The host leans in again, clearly struggling with how to proceed. "Clint," she continues, voice losing some of its edge, "you're talking about faith. But do you really think that faith is enough? In a world like this, where everything's broken, where people are out for themselves, do you really believe that there's someone looking out for you?" The question is sharper now, but it's less about the content and more about trying to get a rise out of him. The laughter that follows is faint, unsure, and the usual energy of the room begins to falter. Clint's response is calm, almost meditative, but it cuts through the air like a wave breaking on jagged rocks. "I've lost a lot. People I loved, people I respected, but I've never let bitterness take hold. If faith is weak, then I don't want to be strong." His words are simple, but the meaning is layered with years of experience, loss, and quiet resolve. The host doesn't know how to respond. She caught between her own disbelief and the raw, unflinching honesty Clint has shown. The crowd remains silent, unsure how to react to this unexpected shift. What was once a show about mockery and entertainment has transformed into something else, something deeper, more vulnerable. The camera cuts away from Clint's unwavering gaze to the host's slightly widened eyes, her smile now faltering as she tries to mask her discomfort. The silence stretches for a moment too long, leaving her no choice but to move forward, though it's clear she's lost control of the narrative. The energy in the studio feels entirely different, and even she can sense it. The host shifts uncomfortably in her chair, searching for a way to steer the conversation back into familiar territory. Her usual quips and sarcastic remarks are nowhere to be found. The weight of Clint's words hangs in the air like a thick fog, leaving her grasping for something, anything, to regain the upper hand. "So, Clint," she tries again, her voice now tinged with uncertainty. "Faith and all that, it's nice, sure. But come on, in Hollywood, in this industry, How many people do you really think believe in all that stuff? The real world isn't like that, is it? It's cutthroat, full of egos, and people don't just wait for some divine intervention. The audience chuckles, but it's not the same. The usual raucous laughter is replaced with a kind of forced amusement, as though they too are beginning to feel the weight of the conversation. Clint, however, remains unwavering. He doesn't flinch, doesn't react with anger, just continues to sit in his stillness. Then, unexpectedly, as the host leans forward, trying to push further, the entire room goes still. The lights flicker. It's subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but then the studio lights pulse once, sharply, before flickering off completely. The monitors behind them glitch, casting a brief flash of distortion across the set. The audience gasps, unsure of what's happening. There's a brief, unsettling silence. The host's face is momentarily frozen in confusion, her eyes darting toward the control booth, trying to make sense of the sudden disruption. Clint doesn't move, doesn't seem surprised. He simply sits, still and composed, his hands resting lightly on his lap, the cross around his neck glinting softly in the faint emergency lighting. The crew scrambles behind the scenes, their movements frantic, but Clint's presence in the middle of it all remains calm, unshaken. The silence grows thicker, more palpable. It's as though the whole studio, the whole world for a moment, has collectively paused. 10 seconds pass in total quiet, no music, no sound, no movement, until suddenly the lights return and everything snaps back into place. The monitors refresh, the buzz of the studio picks up, but something is different. The host blinks, shaken, and glances at Clint. He doesn't acknowledge the glitch, doesn't comment on it. He simply sits there, his presence now more powerful than ever. The audience is still, almost too still. The lights, once chaotic, are now back to normal, but something in the room has changed. It's subtle at first, like the air is thicker, weighted with something unsaid. The host's usual bravado is gone. She shifts in her seat again, clearly rattled by the disruption. For a brief moment, her usual sharpness fades as she looks to Clint, her eyes betraying a flicker of confusion. I don't know what just happened, she says, attempting to re-establish control of the situation. But her voice cracks slightly, an unfamiliar vulnerability seeping through. She laughs awkwardly, trying to brush it off, but the audience isn't buying it. Her confidence is slipping, and Clint hasn't said a word. He hasn't tried to explain or fill the silence with idle chatter. Instead, he simply rests in his stillness, allowing the moment to stretch longer than it ever has on the show. The host forces a smile, trying to shift gears. "Okay," she says, clearing her throat. "Let's lighten things up a bit, huh? Maybe, maybe let's talk about your movies, Clint. How do you feel about all the action roles you've played? Any regrets?" The audience chuckles, but it's a weak response, lacking the usual enthusiasm. The room feels heavy, burdened by something more than just the conversation. Clint takes a deep breath, his eyes meeting hers. There's no aggression, no defense, just quiet understanding. And then, unexpectedly, the host does something no one saw coming. She pauses, her face changing. It's as if the weight of the moment finally breaks through. "You know," she says quietly, almost to herself, "maybe I've been wrong." Her voice is softer now, less certain, and for the first time, the host is not performing. She's not the invincible, sharp-tongued personality she's known to be. "I've made a career out of mocking people, and maybe I've been mocking something I didn't understand," she continues, her voice breaking. The audience falls silent, the shift in her tone undeniable. Clint doesn't say anything. He simply watches her, his expression unreadable, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes. Compassion, perhaps, or understanding. The host wipes away a tear, blinking rapidly, trying to regain composure. But it's clear, the foundation of the show, built on sarcasm and mockery, is crumbling in real time. The laughter that once filled the room is now replaced by a heavy stillness, as everyone watches the host, no longer just a performer, but a person in the midst of a quiet revelation. The host, visibly shaken, tries to compose herself, but the silence has taken on a life of its own. Her usual quick-witted remarks are gone, replaced by an unsettling pause that stretches on. The crowd, once eager for jokes and banter, now sits in stillness, unsure of how to react. This is a moment they didn't expect, a moment where the veneer of entertainment has cracked, revealing something far deeper. Clint, however, remains unchanged. His calm demeanor only seems to amplify the weight of the moment. He doesn't speak, doesn't push for a resolution. He simply sits, grounded in the present, his presence as steady as ever. The host wipes her face, her hand trembling slightly, and for the first time that night, she acknowledges the truth that has settled over the studio. I've spent so much time making fun of people's beliefs, their faith, and now I'm not even sure what to think anymore, she admits, her voice quiet but resolute. The audience, still processing this shift, listens in hushed silence. I've never really believed in much, but tonight, I think I'm finally starting to understand something, she continues, her gaze fixed on Clint. Maybe faith isn't something to mock. Maybe it's something we all need, even if we don't admit it. Clint's response is nothing more than a slow nod, but it carries more weight than any words could. His presence, his simple authenticity, has shifted the entire room. The host's facade is cracking, and the walls she's built around herself are starting to crumble. The camera lingers on Clint, his quiet strength almost palpable, before shifting to the host as she exhales, her voice now more fragile than before. I don't know if I believe in miracles, Clint, she says softly, but tonight I think I've witnessed one. The audience remains in stunned silence, the show now unfolding into something unplanned, something unexpected. The energy in the room has transformed completely. What started as a mockery of Clint's faith has now become a shared moment of introspection. The cameras, the lights, the usual showbiz theatrics, none of it matters anymore. The host, once the master of the stage, has found herself in a moment of raw, unfiltered humanity, and Clint has been the catalyst for that change. The studio is engulfed in a thick silence. The usual energy of a late-night show, quick-fire banter, rehearsed laughs, and snarky comments has dissipated, leaving only the stillness of two people sitting across from each other, with the weight of an unsaid truth hanging in the air. The host's face is flushed, and her eyes are searching Clint's face, trying to make sense of what just happened. She's never been one to show weakness, to drop the guard that has protected her for so long, but now, in this quiet, she feels vulnerable. Clint doesn't offer the comfort of words. He simply remains present, like a rock that refuses to move despite the crashing waves around it. He looks at her, not with judgment, but with a kind of understanding that seems too vast to be explained in simple terms. He's not there to correct her, to preach, or to make her feel guilty for what she said. He's just there, offering a steady space for her to process. The host, still grappling with the enormity of what's transpired, swallows hard before speaking again. I've always thought faith was something weak people lean on, she admits, her voice low and uncertain. But maybe that's just because I was afraid of what it would mean to believe, to admit that there's something greater than me. Her words hang in the air, and Clint doesn't interrupt. She's not asking for validation, nor is she expecting him to provide answers. She's speaking the truth for the first time. The audience watches, transfixed, as the host opens herself up in a way that is almost painful to witness. The wall she's built around herself has cracked, and behind it, there's a rawness that no one expected. Clint's fingers once again trace the cross around his neck, and this time, the camera lingers on it. There's no grand gesture, no speech to explain its meaning. It's just there, a quiet symbol of something beyond the words in the room. I've mocked faith, the host continues, her voice a little steadier now. But maybe, just maybe, I've been mocking my own need for it all along. The audience is silent, not because they don't know how to react, but because they too are beginning to process something deep within themselves. The energy in the room has shifted from mockery to reflection, and in this unexpected turn of events, Clint has shown them that faith doesn't need to be loud to be real. It's in the stillness, in the unspoken, that true strength is found. The silence in the studio deepens, as if everyone in the room is holding their breath, waiting for something. The cameras are still rolling, but there's no script for this moment. No rehearsed lines or clever jabs. What is unfolding on stage is raw, unplanned, and entirely human. The host, now stripped of her usual bravado, meets Clint's gaze, and for the first time all night, there's no sarcasm in her eyes, no sharp edge, just an open vulnerability. "I've spent so much of my life pushing people's beliefs away," she says softly, almost apologetically. "But you didn't fight back. You didn't get defensive. You just sat there. And maybe that's what I've been missing." Clint doesn't respond with words, but his steady gaze says everything. It's as if his silence holds the answer to everything she's asking. His calm presence fills the space between them, and she realizes, perhaps for the first time, that strength doesn't always come in the form of fighting. Sometimes it comes in the form of quietly enduring. The host's voice falters slightly. "I thought being tough meant always having to be right. That mocking, being louder than everyone else, would somehow make me stronger." She pauses, glancing down at her hands, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. "But I think it's made me smaller." Clint's expression doesn't change, but there's something about the way he's holding the space for her that makes her feel heard, understood, even if he hasn't said a word. The audience, are still captivated by the shift, sits in collective silence, unable to tear their eyes away. What was supposed to be just another celebrity interview has turned into something far more profound, something that no one expected. It's a moment of quiet truth. "I've spent my life looking for answers in all the wrong places," she continues. "Maybe I've been looking for the wrong thing altogether." Clint finally speaks, his voice soft, but his words cutting straight to the heart. It's not about finding the answers. It's about being open to them when they come. His words don't feel preachy or condescending. They feel like a gift, shared without expectation. And with that, something in the host seems to shift. She looks at him, a hint of recognition in her eyes. The conversation has no more sharp edges. There's no longer any mockery, just two people sitting in the quiet of their own realizations. The energy in the room has transformed entirely. The audience, once primed for sarcastic remarks, is now swept up in this moment of vulnerability and authenticity. There's no applause, no laughter, just stillness. The kind of stillness that speaks louder than words ever could. The host takes a deep breath, her chest rising and falling with the weight of the words that have been shared. It's as if she's finally exhaled the breath she's been holding for years, releasing the bitterness, the anger, the mockery. And in its place, a quiet clarity has emerged. She looks at Clint, her expression softened, almost reverent. "I don't know if you can understand what this means, Clint," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you didn't just sit there and let me make fun of you. You let me see something I didn't want to see, something that scared me." Clint's gaze is steady, and for a moment, it's as though the entire world has stopped spinning. The cameras, the audience, the lights, they all feel like distant echoes. What remains is the raw honesty between two people, no longer playing roles but simply being human. "It's not about convincing anyone," Clint finally says, his voice low but resolute. "It's about living what you believe, even when it's not easy. Especially when it's not easy." The host nods slowly, her eyes filling with an emotion she's not used to showing. "I've spent my whole life trying to make people laugh by tearing others down. But maybe the real joke is that I've been running from my own need for something greater." She looks out at the audience, her eyes no longer focused on the cameras but on the people she's addressing. "Faith isn't about being perfect. It's about being open to something beyond yourself," she continues. Her voice is stronger now, grounded in the vulnerability she shared. "And tonight, I think I've learned that. I think we all have." The room is silent, but it's not uncomfortable anymore. The atmosphere has shifted completely, and what was once an arena for mockery has become a sanctuary for reflection. The cameras catch Clint's subtle smile, small, almost imperceptible, but it's there. The host stands, and the audience follows suit, breaking into an unanticipated round of applause. Not because of a joke, not because of a punchline, but because of the realness that's been shared. Clint's simple presence has brought them all together in a way no one could have predicted. And as the applause continues, the host looks at Clint one last time. "Thank you, Clint," she says, her voice quieter now. "You didn't just change the show, you changed me." Clint doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. He simply nods, his eyes full of understanding. As the lights dim and the audience begins to file out, the host stands there for a moment longer, the echoes of her own revelation still reverberating in her chest. She doesn't have all the answers, but she knows one thing. Faith isn't about shouting, it's about listening. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. If this story inspired you, make sure to subscribe for more powerful tales that touch the heart. Your support means everything. May God bless you.